We are back. Thanks for hanging out with us. We do appreciate it. Tony Shields, Rob Ellistone in for Derek Gunn. Speaking of Derek, you can still contribute to the GoFundMe for Derek and his wife, Trish. Trish suffered a very serious medical setback, and it has been the Guns are in for a very long road for recovery, doing the best that they can. But if you could please support them, and the goal is to raise 50,000. We're at 32,460, as you can see right there. Tone has put it in the chat, so you can connect right there to make it simple, or you could go to Derek's Facebook page and it will connect you there, and it'll explain everything that's going on with Trish and what the Gunn family is undergoing right now. And it's a lot, it's a lot on Derek. There's some other stuff going on health-wise in the family. So anything you can do is appreciated. I can't emphasize that enough. There's nothing's too little. Okay. There's absolutely nothing that is too little. And if you can't do anything, we get it. Just how about some positive thoughts and prayers thrown the Guns' way. So thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you for giving us some time with that. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Shout out to D Gun. Shout out to his family, his wife, Trish. We love you guys. We appreciate you guys. We're praying for you guys. So yeah, like Rob said it best, man. Well, whatever you guys can provide, any prayers, any love, any well wishes, anything monetary value as well, it all helps. So we appreciate you guys.
Absolutely. And I, in talking with Gunner, he's like, man, do your thing, man. Talk about sports, talk Eagles, have fun. And that's what we'll do. That's what we will continue to do for D Gunn. All right. So let's hit a couple things here, Tone, Eagles wise. Practice yesterday. Thought it was interesting. Jalen Hurts is a guy who's never going to give an inch on if he's hurt, how affected he was with that bad knee, etc. But you can read between the lines with him sometimes. So what I mean by that, he was basically saying the bye couldn't have come at a better time. He's not wearing that sleeve that he was wearing on the knee anymore for practice, and he said feels really good. Like, I think these 2 weeks, this time off has really done him good. And I can only imagine what that means in terms of his ability to move around in the pocket maybe a little bit better. B, the occasional called run. Hopefully he can get down and, get into a slide mode before anybody hits him or whatever. But I think this is a really big factor in this game, Tone, because as well as he's thrown the ball great from the pocket, man. But if he's like clicking on all cylinders health-wise, we saw what he did against the Chiefs last year. And I know the Chiefs defense is better, but this is a guy who tore them up minus the one mistake.
Yeah. Jalen Hurts is on the fast track to recovery, man. You said something pretty interesting. You always got to try to read between the lines with him. And, he mentioned how not only was it necessary for him to get that time off, he said the other guys, they took full advantage of it as well. Stepping away from the game, getting your mind right, putting things in perspective. This Philadelphia Eagles team, I think they couldn't have had the better situation coming off this bye, going up against this opponent. This is an opponent where you want to have clear minds and able bodies. And I think Jalen Hurts is going to have a tremendous game. I don't think this is going to be one of those games where he's going to need to throw for over 300 yards. I think this is going to be a little bit more of a balanced attack, kind of similar to that Cowboys matchup. But we're going to get into the stats a little bit later. But overall, I watched that press conference as well, and he looked a bit lighter. You know what I mean? He seemed refreshed, so to speak.
Yeah, he did. He was jovial's a stretch, but
I wouldn't put jovial and Jalen Hurts in the same set.
No, I don't think those. No, I don't think maybe if he wins a Super Bowl, we might see jovial, but we have yet to see jovial Jalen. Those two don't go together. But as far as like Mr. Poker Face, like dead serious, lasered in guy, he looked a little lighter yesterday. That's all I'll say. I'm not getting crazy with this, but he was a little bit lighter.
Listen, if you're going to try to win a poker tournament, right? If you're going to try to pull off
he's the guy.
If you're going to try to pull off one of the greatest heists in American history, call Jalen Hurts. You'll never know he did it.
Exactly right. He is 100%. He's a one seed as far as who I'm going after with that. So that's really good, obviously. But let's hit a couple other things that could be real positives here injury-wise. I know Roby was here for 5 minutes before he got hurt again, but he's a guy who's played the slot a lot in his career. And frankly, they just don't have somebody who has any kind of familiarity. And you don't want to be throwing Bradbury in there. You don't want to be throwing Slay in there. You don't want to be throwing the Sidney Brown in there.
Mhm.
Get him back, I think, just settles everybody in a little, where it's not just a madhouse back there where you're just trying to figure things out. So he was a full participant. Juergens with the run game, and and everybody's kind of talked about it. Not that Opeta was terrible or Steen was terrible, but Juergens is good in the run game. So you get him back. That is a way for that running game to get some balance with the passing game and look more like the team we saw earlier in the year, who had the ability to run the ball very well.
Yeah, but in terms of Roby, though, they brought him in, and I think one of the first games we saw him was in that Rams game, right? And the first half, they were kind of feeling their way around. Cooper Kupp and Matthew Stafford and Puka Nacua, they were kind of, you thought this game was going to be a runaway a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But then that second half comes, and all of a sudden things settle down. Sean Desai makes his adjustments. Roby looked great. Everybody just looked super sharp, holding Matthew Stafford and those guys, I believe, to under 100 yards passing in the second half, or less than 110 yards. I can't remember the exact number. But regardless, that was the best. That second half was the best that pass defenses looked all year. And it was almost like they peaked right there, and then they started to decline slowly but surely, because they had the Dolphins as well.
Right.
And they did a fairly nice job in that game, but still it wasn't what it was in that Rams second half. That was their most dominating performance from a pass defense perspective. I agree. I think bringing Roby back settle things down a little bit. I don't think he's going to be this all of a sudden this great eraser. I don't think that, but it settles things down. And those guys have had 2 weeks to essentially get familiar. And I think from this point forward, the pass defense, Lord willing and health willing, it's going to be stabilized. Now, from a talent perspective, I don't think they could get better. And besides, I don't think the issue necessarily with the pass defense was talent. I always felt like it was more so lack of continuity, injuries, lack of communication. This pass defense, they are who they are. Slay's not going to change. Bradbury's not going to change. Kevin Byard, they've all been in this league way too long. So I think the best thing we can hope for is improved communication, improved execution, which will in turn equate to improved performance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think so too. And I think that what you're looking for, especially on the defensive side of the ball, is you already have a really good pass rush. There's no doubt about that. If you can combine those guys getting pressure on quarterbacks, and obviously you're going to need to do that in this game. You let Mahomes sit back there and pat the football, it's over. But getting pressure on him, forcing him out of his comfort level. I know you want to talk about that in a minute, what you'd like to see the defensive line do with him, but and get your secondary solidified. They don't have great weapons. I know what non-great weapons did to them in the Eagles in the Super Bowl, and that shouldn't have happened either. But other than Kelsey, these receivers shouldn't light you up. They're not Tyreek Hill. They're not Terry McLaurin. They're not some of the Garrett Wilson, some of these other guys that they faced earlier in the season. It shouldn't happen. Now, if they do, it's going to be a troublesome sign for what's to come. Whatever Buffalo is, you got to deal with Stephon Diggs. Then you got San Francisco with all the weapons they have. Then you got Dallas. Then you got Seattle. So if you're having a hard time with these wideouts, and I know it's Mahomes throwing them the ball and creating magic, it could make for a really long next 4 games after this one.
Yeah, from a wide receiver defensive back perspective or matchup perspective, this is going to be their easiest matchup.
Yeah.
From a pure wide receiver DB perspective, not necessarily including the quarterbacks. When you have to deal with Sky Moore, Rashid Rice, and whoever else, McCole Hardman, those guys are not even the tip of the iceberg when it comes to the most talented receivers in the NFL. They're nowhere near it. But then, like you said, the following week, you got a Stephon Diggs, right? A one-man band man. Then you got Debo and Ayuk and Kittle. And then you got to follow that up with who was that? You got CeeDee Lamb, who's having a really, really good season. And then you got DK Metcalf and Jackson and Jigba, and then you have Tyler Lockett. So they're going to have their hands full, and there's no better time to get that pass defense sorted out. I kind of want to transition to what you said about Cam Jurgens as well.
Sure.
When he went down, their rushing yard average per attempt dropped by a full yard after he left. So I think him coming back is going to help improve that. My only concern is on the offensive line, more than any other position, they all there's no position group on the field where all 5 guys have to be on one accord at all times. And with him being out for so long, and then you throw him back in there, those guys, Kelsey and Lane, they've had to balance between Sua Opeta and Tyler Steen. It's kind of been, all over the place with those guys. So I'm curious to know if Cam coming back will either improve them or potentially they will have some rough patches early on in that game so they can get the flow back. Because again, they have to be synonymous. You know what I mean? And if your offensive line isn't in sync even by a measure, that can lead to a sack or even worse. So
I think it's going to be. I think they're going to hit the ground running. I do. I think they're going to hit the ground running. Having a little extra time with Stoutland coaching them up.
That's a good point too. The bye week definitely
I feel good
helps
about that part. Yeah, I think you're going to see the run game return to an extent. It's not going to be their primary thing. We know that they're a pass first team, but I think the running game is going to look a lot better than it's looked the last 3-4 weeks, whatever it's been. So I think that's going to return.
Let me ask you this: do you think? Although I did say, but when he left, they're rushing attempts per average dropped by 1 yard.
Yep.
Do you think he was the sole reason why the run game suffered over the past several weeks?
Absolutely not the sole reason. No, I think they got away. Remember the Jets game? We were going crazy over the run pass ratio. I think some of it is the Eagles have gotten away from it a little bit. I think Jalen not being healthy and the threat of the RPO with the mesh play when they know Jalen's not going to keep. So you're either pounding the running back or it's going to be a pass. There's only 2 portions of the RPO as opposed to 3. I think that helps. It helps other teams and hurts the Eagles run game. I think the other thing is when you have AJ Brown, you're going to throw the ball a lot to that guy. It's only natural. Your run attempts are going to be down and your passing attempts are going to be up. So I think it's a lot of things, Tone. I don't think it's certainly not just Jurgens for sure. I think it's a lot of different things.
Yeah, I agree. I think it was several variables that kind of worked in concert. So yeah, I agree.
All right. So here's the question though. And maybe we kind of answered this a little bit with Roby. I don't know. Who handles Travis Kelce?
It won't be Roby. He's too small.
Do you throw Bradbury on him? I mean, what do you do? Because he's got the size at least.
I don't feel comfortable moving. Me personally, I don't feel comfortable moving Bradbury away from his primary position again. I
worry about these linebackers, dude, on him.
No, I hear you. I'm totally with you. I think because they play a lot of zone anyway, so they're going to probably be passing him all that kind of stuff. That's why communication is going to be so key. I think it's going to be. I wouldn't be surprised if Kevin Byard is tasked with having to monitor him most of the time. I think they're going to do their best to try to make those windows smaller to Kelce and force Patrick Mahomes to elevate those other receivers. I wouldn't be surprised if they try to double Kelce or try to bracket Kelce. Try to make those windows smaller so he isn't necessarily a primary option. We know every play Travis Kelce is going to be the number 1 option. He's going to be the first person Mahomes look for. Take that away, force Patrick Mahomes to get creative, and at that point, maybe some turnovers happen, maybe some tip balls because those Chiefs receivers, the ball bounces off their hands quite a lot. So, we'll see how everything pans out. But I think it's gonna be a combo effort between the safeties and the slot. I wouldn't be surprised if you start seeing Roby and Blankenship kind of bracketing him, or depending on what side of the field he's on. Kevin Byard and Roby. And here's another thing too. What makes Travis Kelce so dangerous is when they move him in that flex position. When they put him in that slot spot, and it gives him free reign to come off that line of scrimmage untouched.
Right.
I think they need to find a way to get somebody to put hands and feet on him early at the line of scrimmage, and then just knock him off his spot, knock off the timing just a bit, and we'll see where it goes from there.
I think here's the thing. I mean, I know. Believe me, I'm not discounting what Mahomes is capable of, and it's greatness. But if you make them one-dimensional, I know Andy's going to just say, if the Eagles are stuffing the run early, Andy's going to say, forget it. I'll throw it 48 times. He's not afraid to do that. then let's go. Get some sacks, get some interceptions here, make them one-dimensional where Pacheco's not running, gashing that middle. This is also where Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis come into play, in a big way. That's going to be huge in this. So I think you can definitely change the look of this thing with this team. Interestingly enough, too, Tone, Chiefs have two different tackles now starting. Orlando Brown and Andrew Wiley are gone. They've replaced them with some veteran guys, Donovan Smith and Juwan Taylor. Smith ranks 56th and Taylor ranks 62nd in PFF in terms of tackles. So they're not really highly graded, although you do have to say this too. They've only given up 12 sacks through 9 games. So for whatever they're doing, they're not, if that's Mahomes getting rid of the ball quickly or getting out of trouble, I don't know. But they've been good at not giving up a lot of sacks. I think you can make them one-dimensional. I think that's going to go a long way to success too.
Yeah, I think that's what they have to do. I think it's going to begin with making sure the Chiefs have no other option but to pass the ball. I want to force Patrick Mahomes to have to throw the ball downfield to those other receivers. I want to force those other receivers to have to make plays, have to make big catches on 3rd and long. You know what I mean? Stuff like that. Because if the common denominator, I've been talking about this all week, the common denominator in those 2 losses that the Philadelphia Eagles experienced by the Chiefs, the common denominator is the lopsided nature of the run game. The Chiefs, through those 2 games played, I think they've accumulated, if I got my numbers correctly, they've accumulated damn near 350, like 400, almost 400 rushing yards on the Philadelphia Eagles through 2 games played. I think in the first matchup they put up like 250 or 260. Then in the Super Bowl they put up like 150. So they're averaging, the Chiefs are averaging about 175 rushing yards, almost 180 yards rushing in 2 games against the Philadelphia Eagles. That's the common denominator. Patrick Mahomes hasn't really thrown for big numbers against the Philadelphia Eagles in those 2 games, despite what the
Super Bowl numbers are surprisingly low.
Right. So yeah. I think really you want to beat the Chiefs, eliminate their run game entirely, and then at that point they're one-dimensional, and you have an ability to focus. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like discourage them from running that ball, because Andy's going to try it no matter what. He doesn't care if you're the number 1 run defense. He's going to try it. He's going to test. He's going to test your gangster and see if you really, see if you're really about it. So I think the Eagles got to stop the run. The Eagles got to get their run game going. I personally believe the team that has the most rushing yards, and has the least amount of turnovers wins the game.
I think it's interesting because I'm still a firm believer in, if you can keep that guy off the field, you're doing yourself a real service. Keep Mahomes off the field. I get that their offense is, in terms of scoring, is down a little bit, and their defense is way better than it was last year, but it's still Patrick Mahomes, and it's still Andy Reid coming off a bye. So that's the other thing too, Tone. Like 27-4 coming off the insane, Andy Reid's numbers. I just wonder, like, having seen him up close and personal in the Super Bowl, having game plan for him, and then seeing actually what the Eagles did, because let's face it, Jalen Hurts had a big game against them. I really wonder what he and Spagnuolo are going to come out with here to try to counter, what the Eagles like to do. And in turn, what Nick and what Brian Johnson and their crew are going to do to counter the counter. Like the chess game to me is just fascinating here, because these teams know each other pretty well, considering they're in different conferences because they played in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, that's the thing. Familiarity breeds contempt. And, we're going to see what Brian Johnson and Sean Desai have up their sleeves. This is going to be a big game for both of those guys. Can Brian Johnson find a way to outwit Steve Spagnuolo? Can Sean Desai find a way to outwit Andy Reid? Only time will tell, man. I'm super excited for this matchup. I think this is going to be a great game. I want to ask you a question, though. What are the ramifications of this game in terms of Jalen Hurts' MVP candidacy for you?
It plays into it. You go on the national stage and beat Mahomes and outplay him, if that's what it comes down to, if it's not, some kind of like defensive battle or whatever. Yeah, absolutely goes a long way, because I think it's pretty wide open. Don't you? I mean,
yes.
Do you think anybody's a lock right now?
No, not at all. Not at all.
And really, he had it until he got hurt last year. I think if he doesn't go down for the, what was it, 2, he missed 2, and then he wasn't himself for the when he had to come back and play in that Giants game.
Right.
If he, or whatever it was it 2? I think it was 2.
Yeah,
But
he missed the Cowboys and the Saints matchup, but then he
yeah.
came back for the Giants one. Yep.
So if he finishes the year strong and is right, as great as Mahomes was, and Mahomes was great too, I think Jalen wins it last year. So absolutely, he goes toe to toe with him, wins at his place. Yeah, I mean, who would you say it is right now? Who's your leader? You know, in
my leader right now is Lamar Jackson, and I have Jalen Hurts a close second, and then I have Mahomes third.
Okay,
those are my top 3 guys right now. I think it's going to come down to one of those 3 guys in the end. Outside of those 3 guys, I understand people want to put CJ Stroud in that conversation, but they're not going to do it. He's a rookie. It's fun.
And as much as we want to campaign for receivers aren't getting it either. Let's be real.
Exactly. On top of that, CJ Stroud has the lowest completion percentage out of all those guys. His is 62%.
Right.
So that's going to count against him as well. And again, he's a rookie. They're not going to give him that. He's going to get offensive rookie of the year. That's going to be his award for the taking. He's almost guaranteed that award. But as far as the MVP, I think it's going to come down to one of 3 guys: Lamar Jackson, Jalen Hurts, and Patrick Mahomes. And look at it like this, right? Look at it like this, Eagles fans. Think about where we are right now. We're in 2023, and we're talking about Jalen Hurts for 2 years in a row in the MVP conversation, competing against Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson. I know a lot of people want to say Jalen Hurts doesn't get the respect, and at times I feel that way, but for me, I like to really more so think about the distance traveled for him and how he's positioned himself, how he's built himself up to be this hot commodity in the NFL and one of the most productive, one of the most electrifying quarterbacks that we see in the game right now. He wins games, and we're talking about him in the same breath as Lamar Jackson and Patrick Mahomes, man.
Right.
Talk about distance travel for a 2nd-round pick.
Boy, you're right. You're right. I think it's good and it's bad. Like we're not blown away by it anymore because he's that good, right? But if you do take stock of it and take perspective on it for a minute, you consider how far he came before the start of the 22 season, where people were like, I don't really know, man. And some people wanted to move on and blah, blah, blah. To be where he is now in the conversation with the best of the best. Yeah, he's come a real long way in a real short period of time, and props to him. It is amazing. I mean, frankly, I was toned really big going into the 22 season. I said, just give him a chance, man. Give this guy a chance, and with the same coordinator and same coach for 2 straight years, let him show us whether he can be the guy or not. But there were a lot of people who didn't want him as the quarterback, and man, what he's done since then is nothing short of remarkable.
Yeah, my biggest thing was, let's see what he has. Let's just see.
100%.
I mean, where are we going right now? Let's just see. Let's see what happens. Yeah. First year as a starter, got you to a 9-8 record. You sneak into the playoffs as a 7 seed. Okay, he showed you he can get you in the playoffs, and also that team wasn't loaded by any stretch of the imagination. They were talented on the O-line, talented on the defensive line to a degree, but they didn't have guys like Hassan Reddick. Josh Sweat was still coming into his own.
When you make the trade for AJ Brown, and that's a game changer.
Right. So the Eagles showed you, especially when it came to terms that they weren't able to get Deshaun Watson or Russell Wilson, because let's be frank about this, they tried it. They put in their ticket for those guys. Russell Wilson vetoed it. He didn't want to come to Philly. Perfectly fine. And we all know why Deshaun Watson went to Cleveland. So Jalen Hurts ended up being the guy. And they did what they could to put some pieces around him to give him the best chance at success, to find out what can he do with it.
Right. And
lo and behold, he got you to a Super Bowl, man, after going 9-8 in his rookie year and getting to the playoffs. So there's been this steady progression in his career. I would like to believe that trend holds true. I think the Philadelphia Eagles win the Super Bowl this year. That's just me.
Yeah, I mean, look. Right now, they're the favorite. I mean, you're talking about an 8-1 team. And now people may say the Chiefs until you beat the Chiefs, and that's fine. I respect that take. But okay, then they're the second team in terms of the pecking order. So it's I mean,
to beat a champ, you got to beat the champ.
Exactly right. No, I truly believe that. Like until you knock Andy and Mahomes out, they're the team to beat. Period. If you're just talking about the league, I think the Eagles are still the team to beat in the NFC.
Absolutely, yes.
All right, so we'll continue kicking around some of that stuff. We're going to get into game over unders. And I gave you an example of one, Jalen Hurts over under 280 yards passing in the game. But I got about 20 for my boy Tone here, which I'm going to bounce off of you and you guys. I want everybody in the chat to jump in there too on this also. And we got a lot more to do for sure when we get back. So don't go anywhere. That's Tone to Shields. I'm Rob Ellis. We're Sports Take, JAKIB Sports YouTube Network. Let's talk about Jim Murray and Principal Financial Group, because knowing who to trust with your finances can be very scary. It was for me for a long time. And frankly, I got it wrong a bunch, but I got it right now. I trust Jim implicitly. I trust Principal Financial Group with my hard-earned savings, and you will be pleased as well. Trust me when I tell you that, whether it's retirement planning, 401k review, insurance review, you might have a small business and you need help with the employee benefits, that's another resource that Jim can help you with. I've entrusted my IRA, my 401k rollovers with Jim, and I couldn't be any happier. You will be too. Give him a call, 610-996-4751, 610-996-4751. You could also email him as well. Murray, Murray.Jim@principal.com. That's Murray.Jim@principal.